We're going with 617. Representative Tuss, are you ready?
I am, Mr. Chair.
All right, this will open the hearing on House Bill 617.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Tuss, that is spelled T-U-S-S, and I represent House District 28, which includes Havre and parts of northern Montana. Today, I'm pleased to present you with House Bill 617, which is a bill to create year-round Montana Standard Time, which will replace our current system of having to switch back and forth from daylight savings time to standard time. Well, I understand this body passed a daylight savings time bill just last session. It cannot become law until such time that Montana receives approval from the federal government and our surrounding states also approve such a measure. I believe that such burdens are onerous and are inconsistent with Montana's deep interest in having one standard time for our state that does not force our residents to fall back or spring ahead any longer. As I campaigned this past fall, the overwhelming response from constituents was that the time had come to stop the archaic practice of continually switching between daylight savings time and standard time and changing our clocks. The U.S. tried permanent daylight savings time in 1974. The United Kingdom tried it from 1968 to 1971, and Russia attempted it from 2011 to 2014. In every single instance, there was ultimately public outcry and reversal of the policy. Currently in the United States, as some of you may know, Arizona, Hawaii, and all of our territories observe permanent standard time, and they have no problem with it. As you probably also know, both Arizona and Hawaii actually have very significant agricultural sectors, much like Montana, and they also have very robust economies. This legislation is also the direct result, as your last bill was, of a constituent request, and the very best form of policy development in Montana, which are backyard conversations. You will hear directly from a constituent of mine and my next-door neighbor about why now is the time to make the switch in Montana to standard time. Thank you for considering this proposal.
Thank you. We'll now go to proponents in the room.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for listening to me today. I'll try to keep it short. I know you guys are real busy. My name is William Kilgore, K-I-L-G-O-R-E. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today in support of House Bill 617, introduced by Representative Tuss. You're going to hear today both pros and cons about this bill and moving daylight savings and standard time and the health benefits and the commerce benefits and everything else. I'm going to ask you to just think on a personal level of yourself and your friends and your family. Changing times twice a year sucks. I'm sorry, it just does. You know, I mean, it messes you up for an entire week at least, you know, and there's no point in it. I mean, the sun sets when it sets, it rises when it rises. So I understand that there's going to be arguments on both sides, and I just ask you to take that into consideration because this has been any politicians that's ever knocked on my door, I don't want to be a one-issue guy, but my first question is, hey, where do you stand on time change? You know, and the federal government the Senate last year passed a bill. It got stuck in the House. It's not going through. We can't stay on daylight savings time because of the federal government. We have to go to standard time if we're going to change this bill, or if we're going to change our laws, and so I ask you, who takes the first step? Who's gonna challenge the federal government and say, look, this is ridiculous. This is an archaic system. You can't. There's a very famous meme out there about an Indian chief that says you can't cut 6 inches off the top of a blanket and sew it onto the bottom and I think you have a longer blanket, right? That's what we're doing with the time. It doesn't make sense. it's not an agriculture thing. This time change was designed for World War II to save energy. And it's been proven that it doesn't save energy. It didn't save it back then. It especially doesn't do it now with all of the electronics and technology that we have. So I'm not an expert on any of the benefits and or the cons or whatever to changing the time. I just know it's terrible. All my friends hate the time change. It messes up our circadian rhythms twice a year for no reason. It's time for somebody to step forward and say, you know what, enough is enough. Montana has that independent spirit, and I ask you to have the courage to stand up for your constituents and do what's right for Montana and lead the way in the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Further proponents? We got one in the room here.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Michael Lawler, L-A-W-L-O-R. I hadn't planned to speak on this bill. I'm here for other reasons, but when I saw that this one came up, I had to say something in my capacity as a parent. I have a son. He's a young adult now in his early 20s. My son, Thomas, he has a mild type of autism. And daylight saving time and the time change was the bane of his existence as a child. It affects him worse than it affects all the rest of us. And he actually was upset about it enough when he was in 3rd or 4th grade. He said, who makes these rules? And I said, well, the legislature does. And he wrote a letter to his legislator. Senator Tom Facey at the time was our senator in our district, and Senator Facey was kind enough to arrange a meeting with him at the school library and talk through his concerns and so on. But this issue remains near and dear to my son Thomas and to me as well, and I think it's a good idea. I would urge it to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponents? We'll go to the first proponent online, JP.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is JP, that's J-A-Y, last name is P-E-A. I'm the president of the nonprofit Save Standard Time. I'm here to ask for due pass support of House Bill 617 to exempt your state from daylight saving time and to restore permanent standard time. I actually live in Arizona, and it is wonderful. I can't say enough about how good it is to end clock change and to do it with permanent standard time. Standard time is the real clock defined from the natural world. So if you're an outdoorsman like myself, know how to tell the time from where the sun is in the sky, that's what standard time is. Daylight time is a false clock invented during World War I to force early waking. It is an outdated idea. Permanent standard time is best for health, safety, education, economy, especially for school children and farmers and radio broadcasters and others who work outdoors or who need morning light. This is the opinion of the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Neurology, the American College of Chest Physicians, the National Safety Council, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the National PTA, newspapers like Bloomberg, Minneapolis Star Tribune, the Oregonian, writers from Cato, from Daily Wire. There really is broad support for permanent standard time. It's also federally pre-approved, so it's the quickest and easiest way to end your clock change. You can make it happen right now. More states than ever are considering permanent standard time, including Minnesota, Oregon, many others, and I'm certain that many more will follow your lead on this issue. As it was mentioned, Arizona, Hawaii, and all 5 U.S. territories already observe permanent standard time. Mexico, just a few months ago, ended daylight saving time and restored their permanent standard time. Last year, Alberta, to your north, rejected permanent daylight time in a vote. Other provinces of Canada are waiting to follow the United States on this issue. Daylight saving time does not save energy. It does not improve the economy. It does not improve safety. And it cannot make winter feel like summer. In fact, it only would make winter feel worse. Permanent daylight time would have delayed your sunrise today past 8 o'clock in the morning. This meeting would have begun before sunrise if you were on permanent daylight time. A month ago in January, permanent daylight time would have put your sunrise after 9 o'clock in the morning. Permanent daylight time has cost lives in the past. When it was tried in the 1970s, it has failed in other countries as well. Permanent daylight time would be essentially asking your constituents to wake an hour early all of winter, which I don't think they want to do. Permanent standard time is consistently supported in professional polling. It is best for health, safety, education, economy, especially kids and farmers. I urge a due pass on House Bill 617. Glad to answer any questions you might have, and thank you again very much for this bill and this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. P. Further proponents? I'm not seeing any, Amanda.
No, Mr. Chair, there aren't any online.
We'll go to opponents in the room.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Rhonda Wiggers, W-I-G-G-E-R-S, and I stand before you today on behalf of Montana Broadcasters Association. And we rise in opposition to this, not to debate health issues or anything else, but just some practical issues. Broadcasting's done with a nationwide move of hourly changes, and you expect and it works as it moves through time zones. When you attempt to do broadcasting where there's an outlier, you have issues. You also have some commerce issues across the borders. And I would maintain that it works in Hawaii. There are no borders in Hawaii. Hawaii's not getting TV broadcasts from the neighboring states. They're not picking up radio broadcasts. If you are over in the eastern part of the state of Montana, where you're picking up your news from Williston, if we went to this route, there would be times of the year where there was a 2-hour difference as you cross the border instead of a 1-hour difference. So you would be getting your 6 o'clock news at 4 o'clock in the evening. It makes it really difficult for broadcasters to attempt to do programming, and seems like a pretty minor thing, but I'm kind of disappointed that our football coach left the room, because I was going to point out that this is that this isn't an issue at all times of the year. But by the time you got to October, and Montana's a really big state, if we eliminate daylight savings time, where you're still practicing football in the fall, in western Montana, you're gonna have till 5:20 to get that football practice in before dark, but over in the eastern side of the state, it's going to be 4:50 and the sun's going to have gone down. So the kids are going to be playing ball in the dark. Kind of works the same in the spring with baseball. When this bill came up last session, I told my clients, the broadcasters, I said, oh, this never passes. And it never passed in the past, because we have to go, as you have learned, we have to go to standard time. It's the only thing we can do without permission from the federal government. And when you look at going to standard time, then what that did is created that 2-hour time difference on the eastern part of the state of Montana, an hour into Wyoming part of the year, and then we're on Washington time, which doesn't make a lot of sense as we're working, and then flips us backwards. So there's always been people coming in and complaining. Usually soccer moms find this in the second hearing, and you'll get a pile of them. Well, last session it didn't happen that way, and it didn't happen that way because we found a reasonable solution, a solution that says Montana will go to, in this case, daylight savings time, so people had more time. I think they wanted their recreational hours in the summer, as long as our surrounding states go with us, so that South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, and Wyoming and Utah move with us. Those states have adopted, my understanding, is similar legislation that if the federal government allows for you to go to daylight savings time and their surrounding states go, that way it makes everybody, for commerce, you don't have those 2-hour gaps. So although this seems like a really good idea, I guess if you pass this bill, my mother and her friends would have nothing to complain to me about twice a year for 2 weeks that we don't fix the legislature. So don't take that away from my mom. She'd have nothing to complain about. Please do not pass this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggers. Further opponents? Seeing no opponents online, we'll go to informational witnesses. Seeing none, we'll go to questions from the committee. Representative Bergstrom.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question for the bill sponsor.
Representative Tuss.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I notice there's no effective date on this bill. What did you have in mind for an effective date?
Could I borrow your bill for just... don't have this in my packet. Representative, given the fact that there is no effective date in this bill, it's my understanding that it will become effective on October 1st of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and Jamison gave that the thumbs up, so. Further questions from the committee? Any further questions from the committee? All right, Representative Tuss, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to close, and thank you for the great hearing. And I appreciate the proponents of this particular bill. I think the time has come for this. I think it's time for us as legislators to be bold enough to take a step that may seem a little queasy. We've never done this before, but I really do believe that the time to switch to Montana Standard Time is right now. It's successful in the places that have done this before, and as I saw many of the heads nodding on the committee as we were talking about this, I think that you know that this makes a lot of common sense. So I would urge you to pass on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tuss. This closes the hearing on House Bill 617.